I dated somebody from Burkina Faso and broke my heart. I was a blubbering mess. And my daughter was like, paint mommy, and finally I just Googled painted mud huts in Africa. And I found the village of Chibale in southern Burkina Faso. And there was just this instinct, just tug at my heart, my chest, my soul of that's the place. I worked for the organization that worked with folks on public assistance, okay? And I got paid so crappy that I still qualified for public assistance while working there, okay? I already had a strong desire to help, but having that experience is really what solidified, no matter what gets in my way, I have to do something, because there's 25,000 children each year that are not here, but I am. Think whatever your idea is, don't think it's too small or that it doesn't matter. Whatever it is, whatever is inspiring you, or whatever that thing is that you can't describe, or people are like, oh, that's stupid, or it doesn't matter, don't listen to them. Just do it. Try something new, and if you fail, who cares? At least you tried something.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Atypical Journey. Today, we are joined by Sarah Drake, a remarkable artist, activist, and educator whose story is as inspiring as it is impactful. From becoming a single mom at a very young age, Sarah has turned adversity into action, creating her Arts in Action, a nonprofit dedicated to equity through art. Her work spans continents, addressing clear water access in Burkina Faso and advocating for marginalized communities in Minnesota. This year, Sarah was honored with the 2024 President's Lifetime Achievement Award, cementing her legacy as a changemaker. We dive into her early life, her path to art and advocacy, and the triumphs and challenges that define her extraordinary journey. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining me today. I'm so excited. I've been watching you all these past couple of years, and it's amazing everything you've been doing.
Thank you. I'm honored to be here and chat with you.
Of course. I like to start right from the beginning. I want to hear more about your early life and your family situations. How was it like growing up, and whether your early education at home had an impact in who you became later in life?
So I grew up in the country of a rural town that the town didn't even have a stoplight. Very small. That was not my personality at all. And I loved to read. I loved art. And I was very supported in having access to things to play with, but it was very different then. It was before the internet and cell phones and all of that. And so you had no choice but to go outside and, use your imagination and be creative. And so I think I was lucky in that way. But also reading, and being involved in volunteering at a really young age. And I remember with Girl Scouts, or it would have been brownies at the time, trying to sell enough cookies so that I could get this book that had a lot of information about Africa in it. I don't know how it started, but just at a very young age, I loved learning about Africa. And I remember hiding in my closet after bedtime with a flashlight to read this book about Africa. And when we were playing, I would always be the art teacher. And that's just kind of how everything started out for me, was just this big curiosity about Africa and, being creative and wanting to teach and volunteering. I just always remember all of those things being a part of my story and my journey.
Did your parents encourage your artistic side? And did you know from that point on that you will make it a career as of yours, or was it just a hobby?
So from like parents, community, the school, like everybody supported being creative and being an artist in school. But then when it came time to adults, it was that's not going to help you survive in life, and you need to make realistic career choices. And there's truth to that, right? Like there's the stereotype of the starving artist, but there's also things that could have been done differently to encourage it and to help me know what those things were that I needed to where I could have been successful, to where I took a big step away from the arts for a long time, like in my 20s, because it just was this painful shift of being so supported to be creative. And then it's like, oh, no, now go do adulting and it can't be creative. And so it was very jarring for me. And I, kind of, like I said, stepped away from making art and having that be such a core piece, and then found it again in life later.
So which educational path did you take outside of art? Is there another career path that you decided to embark on?
So I tried to do advertising and graphic design, and that, though, was people telling you what you had to do. And there's no creativity in that. And it was just felt very pressured and like, ah. And so, and that was also in the late 90s. And so by the time that 9/11 happened, that industry was already starting to go down, and then it just like ended. And so my educational career took me, I was in the technical college for the advertising and graphic design. I went to a 4-year university, and I was majoring in I was always changing my major. I was in ethnic studies, I was in geography, I was in human relations. And before getting that, I call myself a nursing school dropout, because when I had my daughter, I tried going into nursing because that was going to be like a steady income and needed no matter the economy, right? But I absolutely hated it, and it wasn't where I was going to thrive, and eventually got a master's degree in social responsibility. And that happened only because I literally could not afford to work, being a single mom and the cost of things. And so it was go back to school because I could get a GA and my school paid for. So, yeah.
Would you say that that was a time where you were still trying to find yourself, know yourself better, figure out what you like to do as an individual? It's funny you mentioned nursing school, because when I moved from Burkina Faso to the US, I was also told that I should become a nurse because that's where it's almost guaranteed to get a job. And no offense to nurses, my mom is a nurse. I really did not feel any pull towards that medical field. And it's so hard that a lot of people feel confined to situations or places that they really don't feel like they belong. Have you always felt that push towards activism during those college years, or that's something that you developed years later?
No, all of it, activism looked different as a kid. Again, pre-internet, being small community, like what that was, back then was seeing the commercials on the TV for sending money to my starving children or whatever it was called, right? Getting the quarters out of the couch and sending that, volunteering through church, being a big sister to a kid at school. Like it started out that way. In college, that was more organized. I was actually in a city and, I had people around that were, just opening my mind to other things. Like, that's the thing about education, is you learn more. And so as I learned more, I wanted to do more and have more of an impact. And so, my activism like just exploded when I was in college, because I had the opportunities to do that. And even, my daughter was like a year and a half old, and we went to a protest. And I don't remember exactly what it was for, but somebody said, like, what kind of mother are you to have your child out here? And not only was she walking, she was talking. Like, she's a year and a half, 2 years old. And she's like, my uncle's in the military. Like, she like could rattle off all the reasons why she was there. It wasn't that I was forcing her to do it. And so then, raising a biracial child in this world, like, then the activism grew even more, because I was, trying to advocate on her behalf. And as she got older, we were participating in things together.
I want to explore more that turning points of your life, your journey to motherhood. How did that come about, and what are the circumstances around that? Did any of that shape you? Did any of that change the trajectory of your life at that period?
Yeah, so I was 25 when I had her, and I was going through a divorce, and, I have always had health issues, depending on what the health issue was. But I was like 15, 16 years old when the doctors told me I'd probably never get pregnant. And if I did, I'd probably miscarry. Wow. And so when I was married, we were trying all the fertility things. Nothing worked. And, rebound fling after the divorce, and like being told I couldn't get pregnant, birth control and condom, and I'm pregnant. And it's like, how the hell did this happen? Like, are you kidding me? And it was like, initially I felt embarrassed and ashamed, and like all these things that society puts on women, like we get ourselves pregnant and we get ourselves into situations, and we're the ones that leave us, without help. And I took all of that on, and it was, a time where it was scary. I was like, I just finally made the right choice to get out of this unhealthy relationship that I was in. And now I have to start over, and now I'm starting over with a kid too. And like, what is that? And, but
what was your financial situation at that time?
I was struggling, I was,
were you still in school?
I had finished, the technical and community college, and I had started going to the 4-year college. And so, there were loans, there were, just surviving, not thriving, right? Like, I was just making ends meet. And it's like, how do you do that with a child and all of that? But once I got through that initial, like, shock and like, what do I do? How do I get rid of that shame and embarrassment that wasn't mine? It was other people's. And then, having this beautiful biracial girl in my life, like, she totally changed my life, totally, in so many different ways. And like, what I thought was important and thinking I was making a difference and an impact was nothing compared to what she would teach me and make me capable of doing. And, being able to, just have, difficult conversations with people and trying to get them to understand why certain things were important, or, why is race something that we talk about and still have issues in this country around. And like, okay, but now do you realize that person you're talking about is my child, and you say you love me and you say you love her, but you're thinking this way. And so it sucks that she has that role in this world with people and that she carries that. But I'm very honored that I get to be on that journey with her and help her through it. And even, it just happened this week. In fact, she was having trouble in our healthcare system. And if you're a Black woman in this country, you have the lowest standards in healthcare. Like, it's just a proven statistic, right? And so even though she's a full-fledged adult, she has given me permission to be able to talk and advocate on her behalf. And I literally had to call and be like, okay, we did all the things that you said she needed to do. We did them. It came back that she didn't have that issue. So now we need some pain management for this until she can see the specialist so that she can get through finals. And, they told her she was being hysterical and things when she was expressing how much pain she was in. And we were just trying to say, like, oh, we only need 2 weeks, right? Like, just get through finals. Last year, when they didn't listen to her, she actually went septic. She could have died because they didn't listen to her. And so this year we were not messing around. And we were like, we just need 2 weeks. And they weren't going to do it. And so I called and I was like, okay, before we file a discrimination claim against you, I want you to try and let me advocate on behalf of my child and figure this out, because we did all the things that you said. I said, I have never had to go through all of this to get what I need to manage my pain when I'm waiting to see the specialist. And they're like, oh, well, I can guarantee it wasn't discrimination. I said, you can't guarantee me crap. You weren't part of the conversation. You don't know how that nurse talked to my child. And I said, so I don't care. I just want a solution. And if we don't have one, I'm telling you the steps we're going to take. And my daughter called me not very much longer. And she's like, I don't know what you just did, but she's like, I have what I need to get through finals. And she's like, and we'll figure the rest out after. Wow. And it's like, so like I've been given this gift to advocate for her and for other people. And how I got to this point with what question you asked, I don't remember, but that's where I got.
That's interesting. It's really interesting. How much has having a biracial daughter or having the kid with an African man, how has that broadened your horizon when it comes to realizing the challenges that others may face that probably you've heard about, but if you haven't had the chance to experience it firsthand? So has this experience translated in your later work with your organization and all of the advocacy that you've been doing?
When I think about those things, one thing I never would have imagined is having to go into Head Start when my daughter's 3, because she came home and I don't even remember the horrible things that she was saying about herself. And I'm like, what are you taught? Like, where did you hear this? And it was the kids at Head Start. And there was things about her hair, and I was just like, what? And so I just went storming in that morning. And there was another white mom storming in, but we both had biracial daughters. And they both came home with these stories, and it had started because the teacher touched her hair. And I'm like, why are you touching my daughter's hair? Like, and that's something that I never thought of before. Like, I personally, I hate people touching my hair. I just don't like it. There's a sensory thing. Like, don't touch me. Like, that is not my love language. Okay. Like, no. And, and so like, I had never knew that connection to hair before. Right. Like, I just knew I didn't like it. And then like how people can say such horrible things about somebody because of that hair. And so like that was one of those things. Another was a big thing was identity. So having, you know, a dad that's African that didn't live here, his family wasn't here. She didn't have much connection with them. And being here, where at the time, a majority of Black people in our community would have been African American. And then as she got older, more Somali and more West African folks came into our community. So people would race her as African American and assume things about her and her history that went along with people having enslaved history in this country. And that wasn't her story. And so white people would be like, well, you're not white. And Black people would be like, well, you're not Black. And so there'd be all this identity stuff. And so those were a couple of things that she faced that then I was like, okay, what can I do to help change this for her and for others? And so, you know, even just looking for dolls at the store and being like, okay, yeah, you gave some melanin to this doll, but like the face, like it's still white. Like what? Like that's not a Black or African doll. Like, no, do better. Like, no, you don't get to just do the bare minimum. And so like things like that of her just going up to a doll and being like, what? And just, it helped me find my voice of like, I always say this and people don't believe me that know me now. Like I was painfully shy. Like I would not be able to do this interview. I would not be able to do the things that I had done in the
very
past.
hard to believe.
I know. Like I would have just turned beet red and been like so scared, like, oh my gosh, somebody's talking to me. But it wasn't about me. I found my voice in being able to help share voice for those. A lot of people say people that don't have a voice. They have a voice. The mainstream just isn't listening to them. And so it's really important that I say I use my voice to help tell their stories. Again, with permission, because it's not my story to tell, right? But like helping to bridge that gap of like, okay, you're going to listen to me for some reason, because whether it's my skin tone, whatever. So, okay, if you're going to listen to me, I got the microphone. This is what I have to say. And now you should really listen to this person because that's their story. Now hear what they have to say about it. And then I really found my voice after going to Burkina Faso. But we'll get to that later.
Well, we get to that now. When was your first journey to Burkina Faso? And what brought you there? Out of everywhere, Burkina Faso that most Americans have never heard about till now. Like every time they ask me where you're from, I know it's going to be a long conversation because they've never heard about it. Is your daughter's father from Burkina Faso?
No.
So what's the choice of Burkina Faso and what brought you there?
So if you do, you know this trick, you can do like West Africa with your hand and point like right there's Burkina Faso. That once I learned that, I'm like, ooh, that makes explaining it so much easier. I dated somebody from Burkina Faso and broke my heart. I was a blubbering mess. And my daughter was like, paint mommy, like just use art as a way to, and that's really how I got back to art again is, like I had art supplies around for her because she was very creative, but I wasn't really into art again until this happened. And I was painting things over and over, and I believe in signs. And so I was painting huts that had geometric shapes on them and these big trees that kind of looked like the roots were at the top. And I was doing this every night after she went to bed. And finally, I just Googled painted mud huts in Africa. And I found the village of Tibile in southern Burkina Faso. Excuse me. And there was just this instinct, like just tug at my heart, my chest, my soul of like, that's the place. And so like, if you remember me reading that book with my flashlight about Africa, like sending money, like I had tried my whole life going to the African continent, but it was usually Kenya that I was trying to go to. And everything in life would implode. Like it wasn't just like, no, reschedule this trip, like finding out I was pregnant, so I couldn't go. Finding out, okay, now I think I've got this mom thing under control. Now I lost my daycare assistant. So the money that I would have spent on the trip now was going to daycare. Like there was just all of these things that would happen, health, whatever, and I couldn't go. And this, though, finding the village of Chibale through my artwork, it was just this like, okay, none of this makes sense. This is still when I'm painfully shy. Everything to me has to be planned and organized and overthought and like all of that, right? And I had a friend from Burkina Faso, and I told him, I'm like, I know I have to go. I have no way to afford it. I don't know anybody. I don't know anything. I just know I have to go. And when we were talking, he got a phone call from his childhood friend and put me on the phone with him. And I was like, I need to be in Burkina Faso. Like there's just this pull. And he's like, you're going to figure it out and you're going to stay with us when you come here. And it was just like, anything related to Burkina Faso, it like just everything falls into place. But when I look at it from the mom perspective, I freak out because I'm like, oh my God, if my daughter ever did this, right? Like, okay, just like some random stranger on the phone and like, everything it fell into place. Like I got this contract gig that paid enough for the trip, and that was outside of my normal budget. So I was like, okay, I can justify this. And so like, again, they didn't have access to the internet. So I didn't have pictures. I didn't know who I was meeting. And it's just like, I got to the airport. Nope. I had no clue. And
which year was that?
2019 or 2011.
2011. And what was the purpose of the trip? You just wanted to go and see the art?
I knew I had to go.
It's a spiritual calling.
Like I knew my whole life I wanted to go to Africa. Like there was that calling to the continent. But this was specifically there. There was something about the women and the painting and the village. And it was just the money appeared to be able to go, and everything lined up, and it was like, just go. And that's what I mean. This is when I became like a totally different person because I didn't have a plan. My idea of camping was a hotel with electricity and a pool, right? And my best friend's like, what about your curling iron or flat iron, whatever the hairstyle was at that time, right? And makeup and showering. Like, this village doesn't have electricity. Like, what are you thinking? And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm going to figure it out. Like, because I have to, like, there was no logic in it at all. It was just, everything was instinctual and having to go.
So your goal was actually to go to Tiebele, not just stay in the city, tourist in a 5-star hotel. You wanted to go to the village and experience that life and the art, the local art that was going on. And how did that go?
You know, I got there, and I remember, I think he thought he was being funny, or maybe it was true. I don't know. But he made a comment that all of this was show. that the painting that the women do is not real in the sense of like there's not like this deep connection to it. And so I just remember being so mad. I'm like, what do you mean? Excuse me. And I'm like, no, like this is supposed to be my life-changing moment. Like, what do you mean? And I remember, I clearly remember sitting in the car, and he's like, why don't we just like go see the elephants in, I think, is it Nazinga that's in that part of the country? And I'm like, I am not going to be one of those white people that goes to Africa for a safari. I don't care about no damn animals. I want to experience the culture and the people and the art. And then I just remember going and painting and learning with the women. And like one of the things people were like, do you speak French or Moray or Gurunsi or any of the languages that you're going to come in contact with? And I'm like, nope. But like, that's the beauty.
How did you communicate?
I had an interpreter so my friend knew the chauffeur and the chauffeur knew the interpreter who was actually from the village. And so we all traveled from Ouagadougou together. And so it's like, no, like just go put me out in the community and I'm just going to experience whatever I experience. And so, we got to paint and chat. And like, when I say chat, like you can communicate through dancing and making art. And the sisterhood was built. And that first night, like there was a hotel in the village, and that's where I was prepared to stay. And they were like, no, you're going to stay with the families. And so what I didn't know at the time is that where I was part of the royal court. And so they're like, no, you're going to stay with them. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so we stayed on top of the huts. And I was like, is this what normally happens? And the chauffeur was like, I have no idea what's going on. He's like, they never do this. And they literally went and took mattresses from the hotel to put on top of the huts for us to sleep on so we'd be comfortable. And like, they just made me part of the family right from the get-go. And, helped me learn things, and we shared things. And when like I get really overheated and get sick. And my first trip to Burkina Faso was 115 degrees in the shade. Like it was not the place for this fair skinned, I don't sweat, I just overheat white girl. And so I remember I was trying to be in the shade, rest, and the women were like pulling at me and bringing me over to the fire where they were cooking. And it's just like, it cannot be getting hot. And I'm like, I'm a terrible cook. And so I know like they were the stereotype of living on $1 or $2 a day that we hear about here when I was growing up. Like that was literally their life. And so I'm like, I don't want to mess this up because then you're not going to be able to eat. And they were insistent. And so I learned how to make tow and, some green thing that I don't know what it was, but some sauce. And like being able to do those things with them and learn from them, even though I was sick, that downside. But like it was, again, it just helped show that I wasn't this stereotypical American coming in and, being a tourist and taking from them. And then I'm just going to leave. And so by, I don't know, it was 4-ish days that I was in the village or 5. But on the last day, we all got together. And what was really funny is I was supposed to go to a meeting that the chauffeur left without me to go to. He had arranged it. It was people he knew, but left me because I'm not a morning person. He was up when the sun
You
got
and
up.
me both, girl.
I'm like, the sun's up. We got to get up. Like, and there it's like up at 5 or 6 in the morning every day. Like, it's close to the equator. So it's not like here in Minnesota where it changes. No, like every morning I'm just like, I can't do that. And so he left me. But when my interpreter was like, okay, come, like, we have your meeting, she had gathered the women because I did want to talk to the women also, but it wasn't until like a couple years ago that I found my journal and I was like, okay, I was at the wrong meeting, which is ironic because it ended up totally being the right one. And just being able to chat with the women and, like, we're women. We face similar issues. We're moms. We face similar issues. Like, it didn't matter our race, our ethnicity, the language we spoke, the jobs we had. Like, we all had the same concerns and wants and needs. And so, I'm getting goosebumps even talking about it. It was just like, okay. And like, they were sharing all these things with me about what they needed and wanted, and they wanted the girls to have access to school and education, and they wanted jobs or entrepreneurship opportunities. And they were asking me for those opportunities. And I was just like, I don't even have that for myself. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
that's the stereotype that we can have. We can think that
right,
any white person or American who comes by is
right,
automatically super rich. Yeah.
like I'm low income. Like so this is the mind-boggling thing. I worked for the organization that worked with folks on public assistance. Okay. And I got paid so crappy that I still qualified for public assistance while working there. Okay. So that was my life. But I was like, okay, I don't have money, right? But I know money is not the only thing. And so, but having the job that I did, I thought about the things that I asked my women that were looking for work. And I was like, are you healthy? Do you have childcare? Do you have transportation? Are your kids healthy? Like, all the things that they needed to be successful and retain employment, right? And they were like, no. And I was like, so even if I had the ability to bring jobs to the village, you either couldn't get to it or you wouldn't be able to retain it. So I'm like, we got to fix that problem. Like, if somehow we're able to get the girls into school, can they attend school every day? No. Okay. So, like, what's our hierarchy of needs? We need air and water. Where's the barrier in our needs that are preventing? And right there was water. They're spending 4 hours a day hauling water. It's dirty water. So they're getting sick from drinking it and using it. And so that's what kind of, when Her Arts in Action was born, was like, okay, I have this living room full of artwork that I've created out of this broken heart of mine. I could try and sell it so that I can raise money so that we could build a well. We can work with an organization to do that and then see where we're at, right? And when we left, I got back to the city and my stomach was just killing me. And I'm like, again, I'm not going to be that stereotypical American that, has a stomach, can't handle the food and whatever. And so again, I was still really embarrassed and shamed. Like, I'm not going to talk to people about my bowel movements or lack of, any of that stuff. And so I had met people during those 2 weeks. There were people from St. Cloud that had family there that I met. And so we were having this going away party and I just wasn't really into it. And I got up in the morning to get ready and I couldn't get up. Like, my stomach hurt so bad. And so they took me to the clinic and one of the friends that was made was like the VP at a bank, and he found out I was sick, and he was like, "You're not taking her to just any clinic. Like, you need to take her to this nice place where, the diplomats and the Americans go." And so I'm literally in this armored caravan. I'm in air conditioning. I'm passing in and out of consciousness. And
Wow.
I clearly remember this line of people out in the sun waiting to go into what I would call a shack of a rundown place. Like, I would not enter it because I know I'm going to catch something by going into that place. And later when I asked about it, it was sick people standing out in that 115-degree heat, sun beating on them, waiting to get into that place to try and get some care. But I was taken to the best care. And I was in ICU for 3 days. I had a nurse in my room 24/7. And I survived something gastrointestinal that 25,000 children under the age of 5 died from every year because they couldn't get care. And so that, like, I already had a strong desire to help, but having that experience is really what solidified, like, no matter what gets in my way, like, I have to do something, because there's 25,000 children each year that are not here, but I am. And so that really propelled me to want to do something. And so when I got back, there was an art show right away. And I remember going to apply to enter, and I was just like, I'm too scared. Like, I can't be vulnerable and show people my artwork, right? Because at that time, that's still shy me. And there's this voice that's just like, that is some really great privilege you have to decide you're too shy to do this while children are dying. And that just just like echoed in my head. And I was just like, you're right. Okay. And that's when nothing else, all that shyness, everything, again, that's what amplified my voice again, even more, is because it wasn't about me. It was about children dying. It was about mothers needing access to economic means to care for themselves and their children. It was about girls needing access to school because they don't get access. Yeah. It's not all girls, but there's still too many girls in Burkina Faso and the whole world that, if they get access, it stops at like middle school, because then they're expected to be married and moms and take care of homes and all of that. And so, that was the turning point for that.
You did mention that survivor's guilt is what played a huge role in you founding Her Arts in Action. From that point on, how did you make that organization formal? How is it run? How do you raise funds? How is the governance of all this? Tell me more about Her Arts in Action and how you run it.
It's so hard, because this started out as a passion. I didn't know that I was going to be creating an organization. I thought I could fundraise money and an organization in Burkina Faso would help, and no organization would help. Like, we contacted 100 places that were doing water and sanitation, and nobody would help us. And so it took me 5 years to be able to raise enough money for a plane ticket to go back and do some research and development. Because when I was there, I wasn't equipped to know anything of what we needed to do. And I'm not knowledgeable in water and sanitation. And so that anybody wanting to start anything, have your foundation first. Have money, have supporters lined up first. Doing it the way I did is way too hard. And I'm always like, okay, I can't do this anymore. Like, my health gets in the way, the challenges. Like right now, I'm trying to raise $3,000 so that 130,000 people get access to clean water. And so I'm like, okay, that's finally going to be the fundraiser. That's going to be a no-brainer because that's less than 3 pennies per person. Like the return on investment, like I've never heard of a project that has a better return than that, right? And so I still have over $1,000 to raise. It's been a month. Like I have until this weekend. And I'm just like another one of those moments of like, what am I doing? Because no matter what I do, there's always these barriers that get in the way. And I'm always like, okay, do I keep doing this? I got sick. I want to go back. And I have family being like, you can't do that. You almost died. And I'm like, do you give my brother a hard time? He's in the military. No? Okay, shut up. Like, this is what I have to do. I went back the second time. Guess what? I ended up in the hospital again.
Oh my God.
And my family's like, you're done now, right? And I'm like, no, until I can go and not get sick. Like, I've been there 7 times. 5 times I've been hospitalized. 1 time was like 3 clinic visits. Like, I still have work to do. Like, there's still children dying. There's still people that need access to clean water and sanitation and education. And so, like, when I get frustrated at not having a strong and big support system for this, like, internally, like, I know, like, this is my calling. It's my purpose. And when people have those missions that they've been given, it is often lonely, right? And so, like, I know that. I can help other people fundraise. I can have an idea for something and it works really well until I try and implement it for myself. And then it doesn't work so well. And so,
what do you think are the biggest challenge? What gets in the way of that? Of you being able to efficiently raise funds and get people on board?
I don't know, because if I knew that answer, then I'd fix it.
That's a fair point.
I mean, I know it's all a process. I do believe that there's timing for certain things, and I'm not in control of that. And that's just something that I have to learn to be okay with. And I think, being persistent, I know that I have inspired a lot of people, you and other folks that I meet when I'm in New York and DC and other places. They're like inspired to give back to their community in whatever way that is. They're like, okay, you're making me ashamed. Like, you're doing more for my country than I am. Let me get to work. And so if I can inspire other people, great. But yeah,
and don't underestimate the power of you spreading the word and the awareness. And you don't know, actually, maybe some people have done things that you are not even aware of as a result of coming into contact with you.
Exactly. And that stuff's so important. And so that's where I'm like, the things that I'm doing, it all has a time and a place and a reason. And some of it, something that we haven't talked about, and maybe this is a good spot to bring it up, is like the amount of gatekeeping and sexual harassment for women doing this work. And in the last year, the amount of that has interfered with me getting access to funds has been pretty astronomical. To where now when I actually meet with people, I will share a story of what happened the previous time I met with men. And they're like, oh, that's wrong. And then they end up doing it themselves. And then they do it. Yes. And so, like, I had such high hopes when I met 2 female ministers. And they wanted me to come do work in their country, and great, they're going to pay for everything and they're going to pay me. I put all the stuff together. The person that was their interpreter and the go-between was so inappropriate. I kept trying, you know how we do, we kind of just like kind of laugh it off at first. We kind of like shove, you know, gently move the hand away to where I said, do I have to do this? Like, it got so inappropriate. And like, do I have to smack you to get you to stop? Like, this is not okay. You should have,
for real.
And he was just like, what? And he was the gatekeeper. I lost that work. I lost that money to feed my child and pay my bills. And like, now then going to the next thing, like we're still in a male dominated world. And like, so as women doing this work, like whether it's the humanitarian work or the arts, because the arts is dominated by men, like they're just like these little puppet strings. And like, you know, are you going to play the game? Are you not? And I'm just one, I don't play games. And sometimes people think like, you're just too honest and you're too what? And it's like, no, you never have to wonder
I'm just
me.
a decent human being.
Right? I'm just like, if I have access to things, I want other people to have access to things, you know? Sorry, that's kind of what I was taught in kindergarten. I thought, you know, we share, we play well with others. I kind of thought that'd carry into adulthood, but, you know. So that has been, like, when I think about in the last year when, like, as you know, like going to things, you know, for the UN and different embassies and different things that are happening, it's like I was very strategic, like we've worked on these things, and then like, okay, it feels like we're finally going to get somewhere. And then it's like, okay, good old sexism and sexual harassment. Like, really? Like,
I'm sorry you went through that. And it's unbelievable the amount of people who just won't take it seriously when you say that these things keep happening.
Yep. And then I'm like, okay, this isn't unique. Other women in the space are telling me their stories. And I'm like, if people are coming here and treating women this way, I know they're treating women back home terribly, and that's not okay. And so it's funny, like the things that end up being my barriers end up fueling the fire in me to keep going. Like I have that momentary, like, okay, we have these barriers again. Like, why do I keep doing this? Like I have my pity party for like a day maybe. And I, you know, I'll cry, I'll vent, I'll be like, I'm done, I'm not doing this anymore. And then sometimes I don't even get to verbalize it. I'll just think it. And already somebody will have messaged me and shared like how something has impacted them or like how they need my help to do this. And so I finally got to a point where I don't welcome the chaos and the barriers, right? Like I don't want that. But I finally got to a point of accepting them and realizing like they're part of the process and they're what's going to fuel me and keep me going, because you're not going to get me stop doing, like, you're going to harass me. Okay. That means I know you're doing worse to other people, and that doesn't sit well with me. So I'm going to keep going and fighting this. So
thank you so much for sharing that. I really hope that people listen to this and do better, because I'm sure whoever you're talking about or whoever did this, they will watch it at some point. I don't know if I can keep a hope that someday normal behavior, you know, common sense, normal human decency will be really shared among all people, because this is really not asking for much, you know.
No,
just be a respectful person, you know, that's really the bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Well, every journey has its lowest points. If you look back, what was the point where you were really almost at, I want to give up, I can't do this? What was your lowest, your breaking point, and how did you get back up from that?
I don't know what a lowest is, because there's always some measure of all of this. So there's always because I'm choosing to, like, all of this stuff is volunteer. So I don't get paid for any of it yet. I'm putting that out there. That's been volunteer, like, the struggling artist, single mom, like, finances have been hard, my health and that kind of stuff. Family, like, there's always something, and it just kind of depends on, like, how much of each of those is happening at the time, right? But it's always there. There's always the, worrying about my daughter. Is she safe? Is she healthy? How am I having to advocate for her in educational and health systems? Once when George Floyd was murdered, like, that was just an hour from us. And it was the first time that she was old enough to really understand and comprehend what it meant, and that she was like, that could be me. And that changed our advocacy. And, like, so there's always something that's happening to where I don't know that there's been an absolute lowest. It's just there's always something that's trying to, like, get in the way or keep down. But like I said, there's just always things that pop up to keep me going. One thing that I didn't really fully understand, or, like, take it as, like, a shield or a badge of honor, if you will. But this spring, I was able to have Romare Bearden's work in St. Cloud. And I wasn't going to use my artwork that already existed, right? Like, I'm creating a new body of work that's going to be inspired by him and be, like, great work for people to look at. Because when you're an artist, you look back at your stuff and you're like, oh, that's crap, right? And so you're, like, always trying to improve. And so I got four small pieces and one large piece made. And then I broke my arm, my dominant arm.
Ouch.
And I fell, like, my face was all scun up, like, I was a mess. And the first thing my daughter said to me was, what are we going to do so that you get to make your art for your show? Like, you've worked so hard for this. Like, I've said, like, being able to work with Bearden's work is, like, the biggest thing I can do in my artist career. Like, he's my muse, and, like, what? And so now I can't make art. This was in April. I had to have everything done by June. And then one of the things I had to do, keep advocating for myself. Like, I needed a cast. But again, like, that, it didn't matter that barrier was there. It didn't matter that I couldn't use my hand, right? Like, it was like, no, like, this is the biggest thing in my career. I'm making art. And so, like, I started doing things with my left hand, which it came back to me because when I was, like, 4 years old, I had pneumonia. They put my IV and stuff in my right arm. I couldn't use it, so I had to color and draw and stuff with my left hand. And so that just, like, that muscle memory just came right back. And some of the work that I ended up creating, I'm like, this is my best work. Wow. And I started thinking about it, and I'm like, I did it from a place of broken. I was literally broken, right? And, like, I did have that moment of like, okay, I can't catch a damn break right now, right? Like, I don't have the funding, I don't have the ability to, like, just all these things. But it was like, no, like, and again, it wasn't just me, but I had finally gotten to a place like, no, I deserve this. I deserve to do this. But also in having that opportunity, for those that don't know, Bearden was a biracial man that chose, he could have passed as white, and he chose to help tell Black stories in the 40s, 50s, and 60s in this country, when it would have been better for him to not claim his Black side, right? And so I wanted my students and my daughter to be able to create artwork inspired out of his work and to exhibit with it. So it's like, it wasn't just that I was going to exhibit my work. It's that, no, Black and African and biracial children in our community were going to have that experience too. And so again, it didn't matter that, okay, take my arm away. You think I can't make art? Well, I got these kids that I'm fighting for, so I'm going to make the best art of my career, and we're going to have this exhibit happen. So, you know.
I just love that, because if I can do this with a broken dominant hand, you can do anything. Yeah. You know, you can't let any obstacles weigh you down, because you can always find ways to emerge. And that's really, I commend you for that.
In the same moment, though, like, I keep having to fight for like the things that I do need, because there's times where my body needs certain things and it doesn't make any sense. And one moment, like, there's this guy that wants to be dating me right now, and 1 minute you're holding my hand and the next I'm freaking out and you get mad at me, and it's like, I can't change my nerves and my pain, and like it hurts for you to hold my hand right now. You getting mad at me doesn't help anything. Like, there's just all these things that are always in flux around me with my body and the things that I need, and needing those adaptations and understanding, I think, has made me a better activist and ally, and all those amazing A words that are out there, of just creating awareness of, you know, being able to advocate and do the stuff that I'm doing from a lens of, okay, like, I'm not a wheelchair user, but I know what it's like to have to modify my body. And now I can be in a space and be like, you know what, you're not a wheelchair friendly space. You need to move these things so people can get through here. Like, oh, do you realize all the people in your advertisements are white? Like, it just, the challenges that I've had have just opened my eyes more for those that have even more challenges than me, or similar, or even different. Doesn't have to be on a spectrum, but just that idea of like just being more aware that, you know, being kind and looking out for other people and all of that is important to do.
How can people support you better in doing your work? What do you want them to take away from this conversation, take away from your experience and everything that you've already done? How can they support you in your mission, whether it's the Burkinabe people living in here or back home, or the authorities of Burkina Faso right now, or anybody who lives here but is sensitive to causes like that?
Mm-hmm. I mean, if you have connections to make things happen, make them happen. It doesn't have to be with me, right? But if you have connections, like, introduce me and help bring me along that path too. Money is always fabulous. Again, sponsorships, people that, you know, have connections to things. Like, I always find out later, like, oh, I'm connected to whatever. Well, why didn't you tell me? That would have helped do that. And it doesn't cost them anything. And so, again, that kind of like seeing how we're all connected and we're interconnected and we need each other. And so, again, some people think it's only money. Money's fabulous, but it's that human capital as well. Like, who do you know? What do you know? Can you volunteer in some way? Can you serve on the board? do you know other people with money that you can get them to donate or support an event, throw a fundraiser? Those are all important things. And I think just that honesty and integrity, and like that's in Burkina Faso's name, right? The land of upright men of integrity. And there's been a few things where I've heard people be like, oh, well, that's good enough, or things like that, where it's like, no, it's not. If I'm telling you it's not. And that idea of like, if something's been done a certain way, that doesn't mean it's the only way. It doesn't mean, and I say that knowing like I'm very respectful of culture and things like that, but also like we have to get past the status quo or the way it's always been, and be willing to have those conversations or take those steps. Because if we keep doing the same thing, we're going to have the same results. And if we want things to be better, then we have to do things to help make them better. And so some of it's just people having that awakened in themselves of like, oh, I can do better. I mean, I was a single mom, starving artist with health issues that almost died. And now we've got 30 girls that are in 4th, 5th, and 6th grade. They started in kindergarten. We've helped 17,000 people get access to clean water. And if we can do this next project, it'll be another 130,000, like 150,000 plus people gain access to clean water because I didn't have access to clean water and got access to healthcare and was inspired to do something. And so like, don't think whatever your idea is, don't think it's too small or that it doesn't matter. Like whatever it is, whatever is inspiring you or whatever that thing is that you can't describe, or people are like, oh, that's stupid or it doesn't matter. Like, don't listen to them. Just do it. Try something new. And if you fail, who cares? Like, at least you tried something.
And what I love the most about your project is that it's tangible, that you can see the change. If you sponsored children to go to school, you literally can track that. You can know how many children got to school. If you helped build a well, it's there, it's physical, you get to see it. So contrary to some other projects where you kind of like don't know if your money is being used well, these type of projects I think should be easier to fund for people who are looking for transparency, because you literally always show the end product. So that's great.
Yep. And like I said, so far I've not been paid anything. So it all goes directly to our projects.
Very soon you're gonna be paid.
I will. We're gonna change that.
We gotta change that so you're not starving. You
right.
Can pour from an empty cup.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep. And that's where this last year I realized that. And that's why I was so frustrated, like I said, with the harassment and the things that I faced. It's like, okay, like harassment's one thing. I can deal, like I'm used to that. You go out to the club, you get harassed, like whatever. It's not okay, but I can
deal with it.
Move it off. But now you're messing with my money that I'm trying to make while also trying to make the world better for other people. Now you've pissed me off. Like, don't know.
Don't play with my food.
Yes.
Do you have any special projects? I know you have the fundraiser right now, but do you have any other long-term things that you have envisioned that you want to share about, and on a positive note?
So the whole goal was getting girls in school. We capped it at 30 with COVID and everything, the coups. Like, we knew we could maintain 30. I didn't want to promise more than we could do. So we've capped that for now. So we've got them in school, and then the women entrepreneur and employment opportunities. And that stuff was ready to kick off again. Been some coups, some things where I couldn't be in the country. And so once we get some fundraising going, then that is the next step of getting the women what they need to get going on those economic opportunities. And then that will be them investing in the girls to go to school, them investing in the water in the community. And then now we can go to the next community, get them started, and them going and get that sustainability piece going. So we've had a setback, COVID, coups, but that's our next thing, and that'll be really exciting to see how that will finally then come full circle.
I can't wait to see what you're going to
I know, it's exciting.
Yes. Finally, is there anything that you are especially proud of?
I think just doing all of everything that's been done. Like I said, I used to be painfully shy, and so the fact that I can now go speak in front of thousands of people to talk about topics that are important, being invited to UN side events, getting community impact awards, like none of it's about me. It's all about how we're able to work with others and help them get access to what they need to survive and thrive. And so just being able to be a part of that's really exciting for me.
What advice would you give to someone who feels like they also have the calling to make a change, but they don't know where to start?
You just have to start. Whatever it is, start, talk to trusted people, find people in that sector or whatever that you're trying to do, but also protect yourself and your information. Don't share too much at first. I made that mistake. But just be out there. You can't just do it if you're not doing it. So whatever it is, if it's picking up the pen and starting to write, if it's the paintbrush, talk, whatever, just take that first little step of doing it.
Thank you. Do you have any last words for the people who are listening to us?
I'm just thankful for this because I kid you not, right before this, I really was in one of those moments of why am I doing this? I started that song where it's like, I ain't too proud to beg. I literally got on social media and was begging people, please, we just have $1,000 left. And I'm like, why am I still out here begging? And it's because this is important. So I'm just thankful for you taking the time to talk to me, because now telling you these things and being you know what, the next step really is 130, that means over 150,000 people have access to clean water. Our next step is the entrepreneurship for the women so that they can keep the sustainability. That's huge. And so my thing is thank you to you, because now I have that fuel again to keep going and doing this, because that's just really exciting to think about.
What you just said is important, because sometimes when we are on a mission, when we are doing something for a long time, at some point you kind of lose track of where you've started, everything you've done, what fuels your energy to do it. And then you sometimes think that is pointless. But no, I'm the one who thank you for not only sharing your beautiful journey with us and everything you've done to inspire so many people, bring children to school and provide water to underprivileged people in Africa. Just God bless your heart, honestly. The work you're doing is amazing, and it's not a lot of people who really do that. So thank you so much for everything. I wish you the very best. And for the people listening, if you want to learn more, if you want to see how you can get involved, let you share all of your platforms and the many ways people can get involved.
Yes. So herartsinaction.org. You can learn about us. You can see the art. You can buy the products. You can donate. And then Her Arts in Action, all platforms, social media, on all of them.
All right. I need to see everybody subscribe, share, go to the website and get involved today. Thank you again. And until I see you next time, keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Bye.